I lost my hearing saving my childhood friend, and she started dating me out of guilt. Her first love showed up at my door and said, "She's only with you out of guilt. I hope you can let her go." I did as he wished and left to let them be together. But my childhood friend regretted it, chasing me to the front of my apartment building, and her eyes reddened as she saw the woman beside me. "Ethan, you'd rather be with a mute than come back to me?" I squeezed the hand of the person next to me, my gaze meeting hers without flinching. She may not be able to speak, but the love she shows me is far greater than what you, who are supposedly just bad with words, ever did. The afternoon Liam returned to the country, I was sitting behind the counter at the coffee shop, scrolling through Facebook when I saw his new post. The caption read, "But my dear, guilt isn't love." The picture was of a faded red string bracelet with a small, silver lotus leaf charm. The knot was heavily frayed, a clear sign that its owner wore it often. The shop was always quiet at this hour, and the rich, mellow aroma of coffee made me drowsy as I stared blankly at the screen. My girlfriend, Chloe, had a bracelet of the same style, kept in a small wooden box in the study. She never wore it, yet when I accidentally knocked the box off the shelf, she shoved me aside roughly, concerned only with snatching the bracelet from the floor. My hips slammed hard into the corner of the desk, and one of my hearing aids popped out and fell to my feet. A sharp pain shot through me, and I clutched my side, looking at her in a daze, not even thinking to pick up the hearing aid. I had known her for over 20 years and had rarely seen her lose control like that. I had just cleaned the study floor, it was spotless, but she still took a polishing cloth and meticulously wiped the silver rose charm on the bracelet before placing it back in its box and moving the box to a higher shelf. Only after doing all this did she seem to notice me. She helped me put my hearing aid back in and asked, "Sorry, I was in a bit of a hurry." "It's not broken, is it?" The hearing aid crackled with static as it reconnected, a sound that stung my ear canal. I looked at her eyes, downcast with apology, and said softly, "I'm fine." But those words seemed to sting her, and she frowned. Then, she regained her composure as if nothing had happened and explained that her father had gotten it for her at a temple for protection back when he was still alive. Mr. Hayes had passed away during her freshman year of college, so if he had given it to her, Chloe's anxiety was understandable. I believed her and even blamed myself for being so careless. But thinking about it now, if Mr. Hayes had really given it to her, why had I never seen her wear it while he was alive? In high school, Chloe and Liam were in the honors program together. With their top grades and good looks, they were the most popular kids in our year, and a lot of people bet they would end up together. But after graduation, Liam went abroad, and Chloe made a decision that stunned everyone. She confessed her feelings to me and became my girlfriend. The two of them seemed to have no connection after that. Even when someone at a class reunion deliberately brought up what Liam was doing, Chloe would just laugh it off and say, "Sounds like he's doing better than I am." As a girlfriend, Chloe was perfect in every way, except for a certain lack of warmth toward me. But she'd been like that since we were kids, distant with everyone except her parents. I just chalked it up to her personality. Red string bracelets were a dime a dozen. I shouldn't have been second-guessing her without any proof. But a lotus leaf and a rose. Chloe Liam. Once you connected the two bracelets with those two names, a whole web of implications started to form. Besides, before we got together, I had always assumed Liam was exactly Chloe's type. My mom and Chloe's dad were army buddies who were discharged together. They were incredibly close, even buying houses right next to each other. Chloe and I grew up together, so we should have been close. But maybe because she was smarter than other kids her age, Chloe never really fit in. Her personality, to put it nicely, was aloof. To be blunt, she was a loner. She didn't want anything to do with me, and I wasn't eager to play with her either. But our families were so close that our parents saw us through rose-colored glasses, convinced we were destined to be friends. Mr. Hayes was a gentle and kind man who always spoke in a soft voice and would make me all sorts of delicious food. So when he asked me to try and include Chloe more, I couldn't say no. "Ethan, Chloe doesn't talk much, but she really wants to be friends with you." I couldn't see it at all, but as I chewed on the sweet and sour ribs he'd brought over, I nodded with a profound sense of duty. The next day, I made a point of waiting outside Chloe's classroom after school, shouting her name, and telling her we were walking home together. "It's that violent tomboy from the other class. Chloe, what's up with you and him?" At that age, kids got ridiculously excited over any interaction between a boy and a girl. Amidst the teasing, Chloe's face flushed red, a rare look of humiliation and anger crossing her features. She silently packed her books, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and walked right past me at the door. "Chloe," I said, jogging to catch up with her. "Mr. Hayes said he told you we were supposed to walk home together." "He didn't. She was a head shorter than me back then and had to tilt her head up to look at me, her face tense. "Ethan, leave me alone," I just said, "Oh," and turned to go buy a popsicle from the corner store. I had tried to do what I promised Mr. Hayes. If Chloe didn't want to, that was on her. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, but then quickly pressed her lips together in annoyance. By the time I was casually strolling out of the school gates, licking my popsicle, I saw Chloe cornered by two other students. Chloe was clutching her backpack for dear life, while one of them tried to rip it away and the other shoved her. "What do you think you're doing?" I yelled, charging over like a cannonball. I immediately shouted and rushed over like a cannonball. My mom was in the army, so she had me training and learning to box since I was little. I shot up fast and was pretty solidly built. A lot of the girls in elementary school were mean. They'd pick on the boys just to make them cry, so I'd fight them. I often took on several at once and never lost, which earned me a reputation. Those little bullies would end up crying, and their parents would storm into the school demanding an apology, but my mom would stand in front of me like a tall, unbending tree. She'd say, "I don't believe my son did anything wrong. If anyone should be apologizing, it's your children," to the boys they were bullying. After that, they didn't dare mess with me to my face, but they gave me nicknames behind my back. That's how I became the violent tomboy. It didn't bother me. If they thought calling a boy a girl's name was an insult, it just showed they knew exactly what kind of people they were. I stood in front of Chloe, shoved my half-eaten popsicle into her hand, and slapped away the hand grabbing at her bag. Trying to steal her stuff? Have you no shame? As it happened, I'd beaten both of them before. I just had to raise my hand, and they scrambled to get away. "Hold on," I called out. "Did I say you could go?" The two of them froze, waiting for my command like a pair of trembling quail. I turned to Chloe. "Why were they bothering you?" Chloe was still holding my popsicle as the melted sugar dripped onto her hand. The usually sharp and proud girl just looked stunned. I asked again, and she finally snapped out of it. "They wanted my money." "So robbery, huh?" I sneered, deciding to give them a taste of their own medicine. "Empty your pockets and give me all your money." They squatted down and tremblingly handed over a few dollars. I gave a reluctant nod, and they took off running like they'd seen a ghost. I took my popsicle back, grabbed a napkin to wipe Chloe's hand, and then jingled the change. "Come on, I'll buy you one too." Chloe walked home with me that day, and from then on, while she was still quiet, her attitude toward me changed completely. She even started waiting for me outside my classroom sometimes. We went on like that from elementary to middle school, and then to the same high school. We weren't exactly close, but you could still call us childhood friends. She got great grades, was always at the top of our class, and she grew more beautiful every year. She was the shining star of our school. I was outgoing and always stood up for the underdog, so I had a lot of friends and was seen as a ray of sunshine. Then, the summer before high school, my mom tried to stop a mugging and was stabbed to death right in front of me. I still can't bring myself to think about that scene. I was skipping back with 2 ice cream cones in my hands, and when I looked up happily, I saw her across the street, lying in a pool of blood with a knife in her stomach. In that instant, I froze, the smile fixed on my face like a mask. The pool of red spreading from under her body rippled toward me, flowing over the black and white stripes of the crosswalk, threatening to drown me in despair. Screams, the screech of tires, and police sirens, a cacophony of noise swirled around me endlessly. The world was a pot of boiling water, and I was being cooked in the middle of it, every bursting bubble making me tremble with fear. The ice cream cones fell from my hands without a sound. I don't know how I got to her side. All I remember is the endless sea of red. The attacker had already been subdued, and the police arrived quickly to cordon off the area. Someone grabbed me around the waist, holding me back. I struggled and screamed, tears streaming down my face. "That's my mom. That's my mom." The hands holding me faltered for a second before letting go. I stumbled forward and fell to my knees, crawling the rest of the way to her. "Mom, Mom," I cried, my vision blurred by blood and tears. I was afraid to touch her. Her eyes were closed. She was already unconscious. The paramedics rushed over with a stretcher. Just as they were lifting her onto the ambulance, she suddenly opened her eyes a fraction, struggling to raise a hand to touch my cheek with her blood-stained fingers. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice so faint, nothing like its usual strength. It was like a feather, about to be blown away. "I'm sorry, you and your dad." Those were the last words she ever said to me. After that, I was like a ghost, floating to the operating room doors, to the funeral home, and finally, being carried home in a daze in my dad's arms. My room became my prison. The smear of blood my mom had left on my face felt like a seal, trapping my spirit inside. No matter how my dad or the Hayes pleaded, I wouldn't leave. I was consumed by regret. My mom had taught me how to fight, how to protect people, but when she was the one being hurt, I wasn't there for her. If I hadn't gone to get ice cream, could I have stopped him? Even if I just got in one hit, or blocked a single blow, maybe my mom wouldn't have died. The thought repeated in my head like a torturous chant, tearing me apart inside until my head throbbed with pain. I shut myself in my room for 2 days and a night. On the second evening, I heard the hushed voices of the adults outside, talking about calling a locksmith to force the door open. I pulled the covers over my head, but just then, I heard a tap on my window. I numbly turned my head and saw Chloe, bathed in pale moonlight, crouched on my windowsill, knocking urgently on the glass. She had actually climbed over from her window next door. Terrified she would fall, I scrambled out of bed to open it. She tumbled into my room along with the night breeze. Leaning on the window frame, she looked down at me, her eyes slightly red. It was only then that I suddenly realized she had grown taller than me. It was the first time I had ever seen Chloe lose her composure, and the first time she had ever hugged me. The girl who was never good with words held me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Ethan, I'm a little scared." I've often wondered since then if what I felt for Chloe that night was love, or just the desperate instinct of a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood. If my dad was the backbone that helped me grit my teeth and survive that sunless summer, Chloe was a source of comfort, giving me a moment's respite. I finally left my room, but I was a different person, withdrawn and quiet, a complete stranger to my old self. Chloe stayed by my side for a month with a patience I'd never seen from her before. Our roles had reversed. She was the one doing all the talking. I tried my best to respond, to pretend I was my old cheerful self, but it was no use. Sometimes I would manage a smile, but when I opened my mouth to speak, nothing would come out. It felt like my throat was blocked, and forcing words out was a painful, exhausting effort. Chloe would often look at me, on the verge of saying something, but she never did. Once, while she was helping me with a math problem, she suddenly put down her pen and pressed her fingers to her temples. The warm lamplight illuminated her features, revealing a deep-seated weariness. "Ethan, I miss the way you used to be." All I could do was whisper, "I'm sorry." I felt like a critically ill patient, helpless against my own condition, terrified that my family, whom I had burdened for so long, would grow tired of me and give up on me at the slightest provocation. I really was sick. After what happened to my mom, I developed a fear of crowds. Being in a crowded place felt like being thrown back into that pot of boiling water, my ears ringing with sharp, piercing noise. My dad took me to a doctor who said I had severe psychological trauma and recommended I take some time off from school. I didn't tell Chloe. The honors program she'd gotten into started a month early. Before she left, she told me, "Ethan, I'll wait for you at school. We'll walk home together." With her backpack on, she hesitated for a moment, then reached out and ruffled my hair. The lingering warmth from her hand became my sole motivation to go back to school. Coincidentally, my new desk mate in high school was just as quiet as I was. Our desks were in the back corner, and since neither of us made an effort to socialize, we were overlooked by our boisterous classmates, two small, quiet islands in a sea of noise. I found out later that she was mute. She couldn't speak. I made it through the first day of classes, and as soon as the bell rang, I went from classroom to classroom until I found Chloe's. I couldn't just shout her name like I did when we were kids, so I just waited quietly outside her classroom with my backpack on. I didn't know then that the honors program had an extra study period, so I stood there until my legs went numb waiting for Chloe to come out. She was in the middle of discussing a problem with a classmate when she caught sight of me out of the corner of her eye and stopped short. I saw her brow furrow slightly. The girl next to her nudged her shoulder and asked her something with a teasing smile, but Chloe didn't answer, just walked straight toward me. "We get out late," Chloe said. "You can just go home without me." I clutched the strap of my backpack and looked at the floor, saying nothing. I was there again the next day, and the day after that. I waited for her outside her classroom every day that week. Chloe still walked home with me, but she was back to her old self, cold and a little impatient. The girl from the summer felt like a distant dream. It felt less like she was waiting for me and more like I was shamelessly pestering her. Until the day I overheard a conversation through the half-open door of her classroom. "Chloe, who is that guy anyway? Why is he always waiting out there? He can't take a hint. Even when you give him the cold shoulder, he won't leave." I held my breath, and after a long pause, I heard Chloe's reply. "He's just my neighbor. His mom died recently, and he's a little messed up from it. My dad feels sorry for him, so he asked me to look out for him." Just like that, she casually ripped open the wound. The September sun was blazing, but I felt like I was trapped in an icebox. Another girl giggled and chimed in. "That explains it. I knew he had to have some issues. I have a friend in his class who says he and that mute girl he sits with are the two biggest weirdos in the class. No one talks to them. The old me would have kicked the door open and confronted them without a second thought. But now, all I could do was slide down the wall and cover my ears. It was no use. The sharp, jumbled noise was still clear, and I could still pick out my name. What was his name again, Ethan? What kind of name is that? The way he looks at Chloe is so creepy, like something dark and slimy. It's disgusting. After that, I never sought Chloe out again. If we passed each other on the way to or from school, I would quickly look away, as if she were a stranger. But as one of the most popular kids in school, one of the top students, I couldn't avoid hearing about Chloe. And the name I always heard alongside hers was Liam. In our sophomore year, our school produced 2 gold medalists at the national math competition. Unsurprisingly, it was them. I stood in the audience, looking up at them on stage at the award ceremony, standing side by side, radiant and full of life. Chloe turned her head to look at the boy beside her, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was like a scene from a high school rom-com, with the 2 leads in the spotlight, and I was just another face in the crowd. A star that has found its moon is no longer drawn to a sun that has lost its light and is shrouded in a bloody mist. I closed Facebook and opened my pinned iMessage conversation with Chloe. The last message was from her. Going out for drinks tonight. Won't be home for dinner. I slowly typed out a message, wanting to ask her if she'd seen Liam's post and what the deal was with that bracelet. But I never sent it, because just then, a message from Liam popped up. Can we meet? I couldn't even remember adding him on iMessage. Our chat history was just 2 bland introductory messages. I didn't think it was right to meet with him before talking to Chloe, but just as I was about to decline, a second message came through, as if he'd read my mind. Sorry, I asked around and found out where you work. I'm outside the coffee shop right now. I looked up and saw a tall guy in a trench coat standing outside the glass door. I gave some instructions to the guy behind the counter and stepped outside. Liam had been handsome in high school, but a few years had shed his boyishness, leaving him looking even more dashing and confident. In my simple ponytail and work uniform, I felt plain and unremarkable next to him. When he saw me, he walked over and extended a hand. Hello, Ethan. I've heard a lot about you. I had no idea why he would have heard anything about me. I shook his hand briefly. Want to come in for a coffee? He raised an eyebrow over his sunglasses. Sorry, I'm not really used to the coffee here. I just want to say a few things. I won't take up too much of your time. We sat down at one of the outdoor tables, and Liam got straight to the point. I came back for Chloe. I just nodded calmly, waiting for him to continue. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing the red string bracelet on his wrist. The silver lotus leaf charm dangled toward me, swaying gently. This bracelet, he said, a nostalgic smile spreading across his face. Chloe and I picked it out together after our final exams. Hers and mine are a matching set. Hers has a rose charm. They correspond to our names. The truth was finally out, and surprisingly, I felt calm. It was just as I had suspected. We both knew how we felt about each other back then. We just never said it out loud. Then my family made me go abroad. I thought she would wait for me, but I never expected this. I finished his sentence for him. You never expected she'd end up with me? Yeah, Liam sighed. Ethan, forgive me for being blunt, but I think I know Chloe pretty well, and I never imagined she would fall for someone like you. That's why, even though I knew she had a childhood friend back in high school, I never gave it a second thought. He was right. In high school, I was average-looking with average grades, quiet and unsociable. Just like those girls said, I was like a patch of moss in a dark corner, just part of the background. How could a star ever notice someone who grew up in the shadows? Chloe is proud and has high standards. No one can make her do anything she doesn't want to do. So when I heard she was dating you, I thought she must really be in love with you. Liam seemed lost in thought for a moment. I couldn't believe I'd lost to you. I was so stubborn that I refused to come back after I finished my studies. Then, this year, I ran into an old friend, and he told me what really happened. His gaze fell on my hearing aid, and he said with conviction, Ethan, you lost your hearing saving Chloe, didn't you? Yes, I nodded. So what? You think she's with me out of guilt, isn't she? Liam pressed, grabbing my hand. Liam eagerly grabbed my hand. You have to understand, guilt isn't love. You've held her captive with this for years. Are you planning on keeping her chained to you for the rest of her life? She won't be happy. We've been apart for too long because of you. Because of me? I cut him off. I suddenly interrupted him. If I remember correctly, my accident happened during my freshman year of college. If you two were so in love, why didn't you get together after graduation? Why didn't you stay for her? And when Chloe confessed her feelings to me, she never mentioned you. Liam's face soured, and he pressed his lips together. I pulled my hand away. Liam, I have no intention of taking the blame for your tragic love story. And whatever Chloe feels for me, whether it's guilt or something else, that's between us. You have no right to judge my relationship. I didn't want to talk to him anymore, so I stood up to go back inside. Liam took a deep breath and stood up as well. I'm meeting with Chloe tonight. I'm guessing she didn't mention that to you, either, he said, a smirk on his face. Let's just wait and see what happens, Ethan. Chloe came home very late. I didn't text her to ask where she was, and I didn't wait up. At my usual bedtime, I took out my hearing aids and went to sleep. In a state between sleep and wakefulness, I felt someone gently stroking my earlobe. I jolted awake to find her standing by my bed, looking down at me, the heavy scent of alcohol clinging to her. The night light was behind her, so her face was obscured in shadow. I could see her lips moving, but I couldn't make out the words. My confused expression must have seemed funny to her, because she smiled, picked up my hearing aids from the nightstand, and put them in for me. After a burst of static, her voice came through clearly. Ethan, why do you always have to act so pathetic around me? Do I? I said calmly. I've told you before, I don't need your pity. It was true that I had lost my hearing saving Chloe. During our freshman year of college, Mr. Hayes passed away from an illness, and Chloe was in a daze for a long time afterward. We hadn't been interacting much at that point, but I went home for the funeral. Our eyes met across the crowd of mourners, and for a moment, a flicker of life returned to her deadened gaze. My dad and I stayed until the very end. After everyone else had left, Chloe suddenly grabbed my arm. Her lips were pale, and she looked more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. She stared at me for a long time before finally saying, "It's been a while." I didn't know what to make of it, but I had a strange feeling. I just gave her a polite smile. The next day, as I was about to leave for school with my suitcase, I noticed the door to the house next door was ajar, and a strange smell was wafting out. My expression changed. I called out a few times, but there was no answer. I quickly pushed the door open, ran out into the empty hallway, and called 911. Worried that someone inside might have passed out from the fumes, I covered my mouth and nose and rushed in without a second thought. I found Chloe unconscious on the kitchen floor. I quickly shut off the gas and opened the windows to air the place out before dragging Chloe out of the kitchen. Before I could get out, there was a deafening boom as the gas ignited, and the room exploded in a ball of fire. When I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't hear. When Chloe woke up, she rushed to my bedside. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees, looking like she wanted to touch my ears, but was afraid to. She stayed by my side every day. Since I couldn't hear, she didn't speak, just watched me. The day I got my hearing aids, she knelt by my bed, gently took my hand, and pressed her cheek against it. "Ethan," I heard her say, "be with me." "Is it out of guilt?" I asked, just as I had now. "Or pity?" "I don't need it. You weren't the reason I went in there. I would have done it for anyone." "No," she said, turning to look at me, her face gaunt and her eyes red with pain and sorrow. "It's not because of guilt." A hot tear fell onto the back of my hand, then another. "I'm in love with you," she murmured, her lips brushing against the tear-streaked path on my skin. "I love you." Back then, I truly believed her, even though she never showed that much emotion again. When your dad died, when you were an outcast in high school, when you were lying in that hospital bed so frail, when you were so timid and just revolved around me after we got together. So she had seen it all. When I look at you, I just feel sorry for you. So sorry for you that I'm sick of it. I keep thinking, this isn't who you're supposed to be. Is that so? I said coolly. What am I supposed to be like? Like Liam? Chloe let out a sarcastic laugh. I was starting to think you'd never have the guts to ask. I can't forget him, she admitted freely. But that doesn't change anything. Our problems were never about Liam. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder and then shoved her hard. Already drunk and unsteady, Chloe stumbled back and hit the wall. Why the hell should I be the person you want me to be? Who do you think you are? I threw back the covers and stood up, planting my bare feet on the floor and meeting her gaze head on. Stop making excuses for your betrayal. Your love is too selfish, and I don't want it. We're breaking up. You don't have to force yourself to pity me anymore. Chloe's dark eyes stared at me, her expression unreadable. You'll regret this. Whoever regrets, it is an idiot. And there's something I've wanted to say to you for years. I didn't kick that door down in high school, so I'll tear it down now. I think you're the one with the issues. You're disgusting. After breaking up with Chloe, I immediately blocked both her and Liam, completely uninterested in the future of their relationship. A nosy old classmate sent me a screenshot of Liam's grand romantic gesture on Facebook, and I just replied with a smiley face emoji. Suddenly, I heard a commotion and looked over to see a man at the counter, yelling and pointing at the young cashier, who was bowing repeatedly, his face bright red. All the employees at my coffee shop have disabilities, a fact that's clearly stated on a sign at the entrance, but we still get the occasional irate customer causing a scene. I hurried over. The cashier, who is nonverbal, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and started gesturing, his face a mask of distress. I patted his shoulder reassuringly, moved him behind me, and faced the man. I'm sorry, sir. Our employee is nonverbal, so he may not have provided the service you were expecting. I'm the manager. If you have any problems, you can talk to me. He snorted. A mute? Why would a mute be working here? Wasting my time. His eyes landed on my hearing aid, and a malicious grin spread across his face. What? Is the manager a cripple too? Deaf? Is this place some kind of recycling center for rejects? My smile vanished, and my expression hardened. As he spoke, he reached out as if to touch my ear. I was about to swat his hand away, but someone else grabbed it first. I looked up to see a girl in a hoodie who had appeared out of nowhere. She was wearing a mask, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes that were blazing with anger as she glared at the man. I studied her, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. The girl was much taller than him, towering over him like a mountain. The man, who had been so arrogant just a moment before, started to tremble. What are you doing? Who are you? The girl didn't answer. She just yanked him out of the line, and then let go abruptly while he was off balance, sending him stumbling to the ground. Hey, you hit me, the man yelped, clutching his backside, his face red with embarrassment. I'm calling the police. This is a crooked shop that hires people to assault customers. The man clutched his butt, his face red. I'm calling the police. Your crooked shop hires people to bully customers. Sir, I interjected smoothly. We have surveillance cameras covering the entire shop. I support your decision to call the police. Let's let them decide who is causing the disturbance. The girl crouched down in front of him, took out her phone, dialed 911, and then held the screen out to him, waiting for him to press the call button. The man wouldn't dare actually call the police. Faced with a girl taller than him instead of a disabled person he could bully, all his bravado evaporated. I came out from behind the counter, grabbed his wrist, and said with a polite smile, "Let me help you up, sir." He tried to pull away, but found he couldn't break free from the grip of this cripple. I smiled as I hauled him to his feet. Humiliated, the man muttered a threat to save face and then scurried out of the shop. I dusted off my hands and turned to the girl who had helped. Thank you so much. I looked into those strikingly familiar eyes, and a flash of memory hit me. I finally remembered. Arya. In my excitement, I grabbed her sleeve. Is it really you? The girl glanced down at my hand on her sleeve, and her eyes crinkled into a smile, the fierce anger from before melting away like snow in spring. She nodded at me and pulled down her mask with her other hand. It was my mute deskmate from high school. Arya and I, one pretending to be mute and the other actually mute, and neither of us very popular. In a way, we were a perfect match as deskmates. At first, I didn't know she was actually mute. I just thought she was quiet, like me. Back then, Arya was beautiful, but she had a coldness about her. With her high ponytail and expressionless face, she seemed very distant. And since she spent most of her time with her hood up, sleeping on her desk, people naturally thought it was best to leave her alone. And I was at my most insecure and timid, so at first, I was too scared to even ask her to move her chair. But after a while, I realized Arya wasn't the stuck-up, bad-tempered mute princess my classmates made her out to be. She would always volunteer to erase the blackboard and take out the trash when it was our row's turn for cleaning duty, and she never once asked to copy my homework. She was even perceptive enough to know when I needed to get out of my seat and would silently make room for me. During the darkest period of my adolescence, she was one of the very few people who never belittled or made fun of me. Once, in English class, the teacher called on students to read their essays, and I was unlucky enough to be picked. I hadn't spoken that much at once in a long time, and I stumbled through the reading. When I finished, the class was completely silent. The teacher didn't say anything, and I just stood there, lost. A couple of girls a few rows ahead turned to look at me, their shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter, as if I'd read something completely ridiculous. My ears began to ache, until the clear, strong sound of clapping next to me cut through the noise. I turned in surprise to see Arya, who usually slept through class, sitting up straight and clapping for me. Her expression was blank, but her palms were red from the force of her applause. Following her lead, a few of the boys in the class started clapping too, and the applause spread like ripples through the room. Standing in the middle of it, I felt my eyes well up with tears. I realized then that when moss steps into the sunlight, it isn't just met with looks of disgust. Some people will applaud the tiny flowers it struggles to bloom. The English teacher smiled and nodded. Actually, I called on Ethan on purpose. His essay is very moving and well-written, and it seems his classmates agree. After class, one of the boys came up to my desk and whispered, "Ethan, I listened to your whole essay. It was really good. You're usually so quiet. We weren't sure how to approach you. We were worried it would be awkward if we just started clapping." He gave me a playful wink. "Next time, I'll be the first to clap." That boy is still one of my good friends today. It was from that day, from Arya's applause, that I suddenly realized the world had never closed its doors to me. I was the one who had built a wall around myself after my mother died, trapping myself in its shadow, letting myself become a patch of forgotten moss, too afraid to touch the sun. The mockery of others could add bricks to that wall, but no matter how high they built it, they couldn't stop me from breaking through and embracing the sun. From that day on, I slowly began to heal. Crowds were no longer just a source of nightmares and noise. And from that day on, Arya and I slowly became friends. "You're one to talk," I said, rolling my eyes at Arya as the memory faded into the aroma of coffee. "We weren't allowed to have phones at school, and graduation was so chaotic. I gave you my number, but you never called." Arya didn't offer an explanation, just gave me a gentle smile. Her eyes were deep and bright, like a handful of crushed stars scattered across a dark lake. Arya had a striking face. When she wasn't smiling, she looked cold and distant, almost unapproachable. But when she smiled, her eyes would crinkle, and her whole face would soften. Her smile caught me off guard for a second. "She's gotten even more beautiful," I thought to myself. "I asked some of our old classmates about you. They said you went abroad. When did you get back?" Arya nodded and unlocked her phone to type a reply, but I stopped her. "You don't have to type everything out like you did in high school," I said, pointing to my hearing aid. "I've learned sign language." Since we'd met again, she had deliberately avoided looking at my ears and hadn't asked any questions. Now, I brought it up myself, trying to sound casual. "Something happened my freshman year. I can't hear anymore." Arya's gaze flickered to my ear for a brief moment, then darted away as if she'd been burned. Her eyes started to redden, the starlight in them dimming as a wave of complex emotions washed over them. There was pity, pain, anger, and something else. I couldn't bring myself to analyze it, so I quickly looked away. The atmosphere grew heavy, and I tried to change the subject. "Back in high school, I learned a few signs to say hi to you, but when I tried them out, your expression changed so fast it scared me. You ignored me for days after that." I paused, took a breath, and continued. "I realize now how presumptuous that was of me. Sometimes, the best way to show respect is to not treat someone differently. You had every right to be angry with me." "No," she signed urgently. "I wasn't angry. I was just what?" Her hands froze in midair, and it took her a long moment to finish the thought. "I was just insecure. Love can make you feel insecure." I watched as she made the sign for love. "Love." I froze, staring at her hands, unsure how to react. She bit her lower lip, then bravely met my gaze, pressing a hand to her chest and repeating the sign for love before pointing at me. "Love can make you feel insecure. I love you." I remained silent, and Arya continued to sign. My mind was reeling, and I had to force myself to focus to understand what she was saying. "I came back as soon as I heard about your," she pointed to my hearing aid, "accident. I wanted to see you, to be there for you, but you were already with Chloe, and she sent me away." The sign she used for Chloe. Arya slowly closed her fingers into a tight fist, as if crushing something. I shivered involuntarily. I knew instinctively that the sign was for Chloe. After she finished, she looked at me with a heartbroken expression, like a kitten that had been chased away from its owner by a mean dog. "You loved her, so I didn't dare interfere." Her gaze suddenly turned icy. "But she was in love with someone else. She didn't treat you right." Arya's hands were trembling, as if she were the one who had been hurt. I instinctively reached out and held her trembling hand. "We broke up," I said softly. "It's over." Everyone else was celebrating Chloe finally getting rid of the burden who was holding her captive with a debt of gratitude. Only she was genuinely heartbroken for me. "Silly girl. Didn't you just say you loved me? You should be happy about this." Arya looked down, silent for a long moment. Then, she turned her hand in mine, so our palms were pressed together. Her palm was warm and damp with nervous sweat, and she held on to my hand tightly, refusing to let go. With her free hand, she carefully typed 2 sentences on her phone and showed me the screen. "I know. That's why I came to see you. I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I just wanted to tell you that you are a treasure, and you have been treasured for years. You are not less than anyone." I had to admit, Arya's words moved me deeply, but I couldn't just jump into a relationship with her out of gratitude. What would happen when the initial emotion faded? How would we even manage? I couldn't make the same mistake again. I told Arya, "I'm sorry. Your love is a precious gift, and I can't accept it empty-handed. Arya smiled at me, and the stars returned to her eyes. She wasn't discouraged in the slightest. I expected that, she signed. Don't feel pressured. She shook her head as she signed. I'm not giving up. The next day, I found out what she meant by not giving up. I was speechless as I looked at Arya, who had come to apply for a job at the cafe. You have a family company to inherit, princess, I said, exasperated. Do you really need the money? Arya nodded emphatically, then turned her empty pockets inside out to show me she didn't have a dime. I was at a loss for words. I know why you opened this shop, she signed. You can keep the help wanted sign up. If someone who needs the job comes along, I'll leave. Until then, I want to stay with you. Her eyes were so bright and sincere that I opened my mouth, but no words came out, as if I had gone mute myself. I couldn't say no. Surprisingly, Arya was a natural at making coffee and picked it up incredibly fast. She even knew how to make our signature latte before I had a chance to teach her. I joked, you really came prepared, didn't you? Arya seemed to remember something and wrinkled her nose, looking troubled. She pulled up our shop's rewards app, and on the membership page was a very familiar profile picture. A small patch of green, sprouting a tiny white flower, growing in the crack between two stones. I was shocked. That was you. Training employees with disabilities is more challenging, and many customers would walk in and then walk right back out. When the shop first opened, we went through a rough patch where business was terrible. Chloe and I had fought about it. She laid out a rational argument, trying to make me see that my idealism was impractical. I was exhausted, but thankfully, a customer started ordering 100 cups of coffee for delivery to their office every single day, and single-handedly kept the business afloat. My employees even started jokingly calling her the co-owner. Besides the ones I gave away, I had to drink several cups myself every day. Arya signed, sighing, her gestures looking heavy. Arya sighed. Her signing movements became heavier. No wonder she was so good at it. She'd practically reverse-engineered the recipe. I was both grateful and amused, a complex, bittersweet feeling swelling in my chest. I can't possibly hire you as a regular employee, I teased. You're the co-owner, after all. Does that mean I can date the boss? She signed, her focus singular. The co-owner only cared about this one thing. I cleared my throat. Well, first you have to make excellent coffee to make the boss even happier. Her expression turned serious, and she gave me a yes, sir, salute before diving into her work with renewed passion. For a while, coffee bean bracelets were trending online, so after talking it over with Arya, we decided to host a free bracelet-making event at the shop to ride the wave. The shop was packed, as expected. I was helping out at the register, but my eyes kept drifting over to Arya, who was surrounded by a crowd of people as she taught them how to make the bracelets. Our co-owner had only been working here a month, and she was already our star employee. And that wasn't just my opinion. Everyone had voted for her. If she stayed any longer, she could probably convince my entire staff to quit and follow her, and I'd have to go with them. I sighed. So calculating. The event was so popular that we had to work in shifts, and there was still a line when night fell. My phone rang. Arya came over and rubbed my aching neck, motioning for me to take the call while she took over. I stepped outside and looked at my phone. It was an unknown number. Assuming it was a customer asking about the event, I answered, hello. But all I could hear was loud, jarring music and the sounds of a rowdy party, like a bar or a club. I frowned and was about to hang up. Ethan, it's me. The usually crisp, cold voice was slurred with drunkenness and held a note of grievance. Why aren't you home yet? Are you insane? I said bluntly. Snap out of it, Chloe. We broke up. Chloe was silent for a moment, then said, no, we didn't. The words were mumbled, but she seemed to convince herself, because she repeated more firmly, we're not breaking up. I couldn't stop myself from calling her an idiot. Save it for Liam. Go have your epic, tragic love affair with him. Someone else must have overheard, because a different, unfamiliar voice yelled into the phone. Hey man, I can vouch for Chloe. She's not with Liam. We all saw it. She turned him down. I was a little surprised, but my voice was still cold. So what? Am I supposed to be thrilled and gratefully take her back? Why should I? I took a deep breath and enunciated each word clearly into the phone. Chloe, I'm going to say this one last time, so listen carefully. I'm not in love with you anymore. I'm going to find someone else. Whoever you end up with has nothing to do with me. Do you understand? Someone else, Chloe repeated, her voice suddenly turning venomous. Who is it? None of your damn business. I hung up. As I turned to go back inside, I saw Arya standing nearby. I wasn't sure how long she'd been there. It was easy to be harsh on the phone, but now I felt a little self-conscious. I walked toward her. All finished. She nodded and opened her hand. In her palm lay a finished coffee bean bracelet. She looked down, a little disappointed. There were way more people than I expected. These were the only 2 beans left. I took the bracelet and saw, in the moonlight, that 2 words had been clumsily carved into the beans. Love, Ethan, I read, and then burst out laughing. You're so cheesy, co-owner. Haha. She didn't get offended at all. The moonlight made her eyes seem especially bright and clear. Does the boss like it? She sighed. I do, I said. Didn't you hear me on the phone just now? The smile reached her eyes, turning them into 2 little crescent moons. I want to hear you say it to me, she signed, pointing to herself with a solemn, almost ceremonial gravity. She pointed to herself solemnly, as if performing a ritual. Just to me. I had her put the bracelet on my wrist, then I took her hand, snapped a picture, and posted it to Facebook with a deliberately pointed caption. My dear, this is what love is. I never expected someone as proud as Chloe to actually show up at my door. She looked disheveled, her face gaunt and unshaven. I was immediately on guard and said preemptively, I'm not lending you money, and you can't stay here. She gave a bitter laugh, her bloodshot eyes landing on Arya beside me. Of course it's you. Arya gave her a cold look and stepped in front of me protectively. Ethan, Chloe asked, this is who you've chosen? You'd rather be with a mute than come back to me? I stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face. This is my girlfriend. Show some respect. Besides, I added, twisting the knife, aren't I deaf? Have you forgotten how that happened, Chloe? Chloe turned her head, covering her cheek, a look of despair on her face. You hit me. For her. I'll do more than just hit you, I said impatiently. If you don't get out of here, I'll really give you something to cry about. Arya got agitated. She quickly stepped forward and signed furiously at me. Let me do it. Let me do it. Don't give her the satisfaction. Chloe ignored her completely, her eyes fixed on me. You know I'm not with Liam. She looked hurt and confused. You know you're the one I love. Yes, I nodded. But do you really love me? Because I've never felt it. She pressed her lips together, then opened them again as if to speak, but nothing came out. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. I do love you. I'm just not good at showing it. You have to give me time. Haven't I given you enough? I asked, finding the whole thing laughable. I just found it funny. From the time we were kids, and your dad said you were just not a big talker. Haven't you had enough time? In elementary school, you liked my courage, but you were ashamed of my reputation as a brute, so you avoided me. In high school, you looked at the quiet, ordinary boy I had become and missed the vibrant kid I used to be. So you found yourself a more suitable object of affection in Liam. I lost my hearing saving you, and even when you were with me, you were always looking back, missing the person I was before, missing Liam. Now that the boy who adored you and revolved around you is gone, you've decided to play the part of the devoted lover. I stared at her, watching the color drain from her face as I spoke. Her lips trembled as she tried to argue. That's not true. Chloe, it's because I've always known that I've always understood just how fickle and shallow your love is. I was trapped by it once, but I don't need it anymore. The first time I tried to let you go, I failed, because I was trapped in my own prison and I craved even the faintest glimmer of your shallow light. The second time, I learned to love myself, and I refused to live under your condescending gaze, so I broke up with you. And the third time, I took Arya's hand, lacing my fingers through hers, and met Chloe's gaze without flinching. She may not be able to speak, but the love she shows me is far greater than what you, who are supposedly just bad with words, ever did. On the day Arya and I got married, I received a wedding gift from my high school English teacher. It was a thin envelope. I didn't have a chance to open it right away, because the bride was so overcome with emotion that she was a mess of tears and snot, a sight so shocking that it made my dad, who had been on the verge of sentimental tears himself, forget to cry. Son, he asked me cautiously, are you sure you didn't force her into this? My dad had a metal pin to his chest. It was my mom's. A lump formed in my throat, and I pulled his frail, aging body into a hug, pressing my cheek against his graying hair, the cool metal of the metal pressing into my skin through his suit. I can promise you, Dad, I said, I'm very happy. The wedding reached its climax, and after the vows, Arya tried to put the ring on my finger, but she was so nervous it took her several tries. The guests started cheering, kiss her, kiss her, kiss her, I love you. I wrapped my arms around her neck and answered with a deep kiss, surrounded by our friends and family, a tribute to our great and silent love. It wasn't until after the reception that Arya and I finally had a moment to open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a candid shot from our high school graduation day. I was packing up my things, and Arya was resting her head on her arm, watching me with a dreamy expression on her face. The warm glow of the setting sun streamed through the window, illuminating our young, innocent faces. I turned the photo over. On the back, a line of poetry was written. In corners dark and deep, a wild, unbidden spring.